Imagine a company known for heavy industrial hardware, circuit breakers, massive switchgear, the kind of heavy gray metal boxes sitting in the dusty basement of practically every office building.
Right, the stuff you absolutely never think about until, well, until the power goes out.
Exactly. And usually a company making that kind of gear, they have a very specific reputation. They are reliable, they are massive, and frankly, they're usually valued by the market like utilities. Low growth, steady dividends, pretty boring.
Boring is actually usually code for safe in that sector, though. I mean, you buy those companies for the floor, not the ceiling.
Right. You want stability.
Yeah.
But then you have Schneider Electric. If you look at a snapshot of their business today, it doesn't look like a traditional manufacturer of circuit breakers. It looks like a tech startup, like a software company that just happens to sell hardware to get its code into your building.
Yeah, it's basically a hardware company that successfully performed a brain transplant on itself.
That is a vivid image.
It's accurate, though. We are talking about a company that maybe 2 decades ago was purely about bending metal, steel and copper. But today, if you look at their numbers, almost 60% of their revenue comes from what they call their digital flywheel.
So they aren't just selling the box anymore.
No, they are selling the intelligence that runs the box.
And that right there is the massive anomaly we need to pick apart today on this deep dive. Because plenty of industrial giants have, they've tried to pivot to solutions or software and failed miserably. GE Digital is the classic cautionary tale there. They spent billions and ended up spinning it off. Schneider somehow actually pulled it off.
They did. And they did it by taking a very, very different path than their competitors.
So lay out the mission for this deep dive. We've got the stack of reports on their acquisitions, their internal platform, EcoStruxure, I think it's called, and their financials. What is the core narrative we're pulling out for the listener?
The core narrative is about escaping the commodity trap. I mean, if you just sell circuit breakers, you are fighting a race-to-the-bottom price war with every other manufacturer out there. So the mission today is to analyze how Schneider evolved from a traditional manufacturer into a digital services powerhouse.
We're looking at the how, not just the what.
Exactly. We need to unpack this digital flywheel, look at how they shifted to recurring revenue, and examine the massive target acquisitions that actually made it possible.
It really is a story about a 19th century company acting like a Silicon Valley startup. By 2024, 57% of their revenue was from that digital flywheel. Let's figure out how they pulled that off.
Yeah, let's get into it.
So let's start with the context. We have to rewind to roughly 2005. Schneider Electric is a hardware giant. They sell electrical distribution and automation products. They are really good at it. Why even change?
Because of the leadership.
Yeah.
Jean-Pascal Tricoire took over as CEO around 2006, and he basically took a contrarian position. He saw the ceiling of the old business model.
But the conventional wisdom in the energy sector back then was all volume-based, right? The world is industrializing. China is coming online in a massive way. Energy demand is skyrocketing.
Right, so the logical strategy for everyone else was just sell more stuff to move more power.
Yeah, if demand goes up, you sell more supply equipment. Economics 101.
But Tricoire took the other side of that bet. He looked at the landscape and argued that the future wasn't about generating more energy, but about wasting less of it. He realized that rising energy costs and impending carbon regulations were going to force every single company to optimize.
But wait, that sounds like a terrible business model for a manufacturer. Hey, I'm going to help you use less of my product. If I'm a shareholder in 2006, I'm thinking, why do you want to shrink the pie?
That's the efficiency paradox right there.
Here.
If you are just selling the hardware, yes, efficiency hurts your bottom line. But if you are selling the intelligence that creates that efficiency, you suddenly have a brand new, virtually infinite revenue stream.
Ah, I see.
But here's the catch. To do that, you need digital tech. You can't optimize what you can't monitor.
And in 2005, a standard circuit breaker didn't monitor anything. It just sat there waiting for a surge so it could trip.
Exactly. It was dumb metal. So Tricoire realized he needed to merge IT information technology with OT operational technology. And that really kicked off the first massive shock to the system.
You're talking about the 2006 acquisition of APC, American Power Conversion.
Yes, for $6.1 billion.
Which is a massive check to write for uninterruptible power supplies. Basically, giant battery backups. I remember looking at the contemporary coverage of this deal, and analysts were scratching their heads. They thought Schneider was massively overpaying for a commodity hardware business.
They completely missed the strategic play. APC wasn't just about the batteries themselves. It was about where those batteries lived, server rooms and data centers. Buying APC gave Schneider a backdoor key straight into the IT sector. Suddenly, their sales teams aren't just talking to facility managers about the basement switchboard. They were talking to CIOs about server uptime and critical power reliability.
So it was a foothold into a market that was about to absolutely explode.
A very expensive, very strategic foothold. And crucially, it brought a service culture with it. APC had really strong service contracts because you simply cannot let a data center go down. Ever.
Okay, so they buy their way into the data center. Then a few years later, in 2010, they pick up AVEVA's distribution business, which expands their footprint on the power grid side, especially in emerging markets like India and China.
Right, so now they have the hardware endpoints covered, they have the data center, they have the grid.
But hardware is still hardware. They still need the software. Where does the brain come from?
This is where we enter phase 2 of their strategy. From roughly 2010 to 2020, they went on an absolute tear acquiring software companies. And I want to point out, this is where most legacy industrial firms mess up.
Oh, for sure. They usually buy a hot software startup, immediately suffocate it with legacy corporate bureaucracy, and all the top engineers just quit.
The classic innovator's dilemma clash. But Schneider managed to avoid that. Look at the Telvent acquisition in 2011. They paid $1.36 billion for a Spanish software firm that specialized in smart grids and pipelines.
So this is the control layer.
Yes, it brought in 6,000 software employees overnight. Think about that shift. Suddenly, Schneider isn't just selling the physical switchgear, they're selling the real-time software that manages the grid.
Then you have Summit Energy, also in 2011. Now, looking at our source material, this one seems smaller in dollar terms, but huge in its actual implication. They weren't an engineering firm, right? They were consultants.
Summit Energy was basically the Trojan horse into the C-suite. They did energy procurement and sustainability consulting.
How does that help a hardware company, though?
Well, before this, Schneider would basically just wait around for a request for proposal, an RFP, to bid on providing hardware for a building. Summit allowed them to skip that line. They got to sit on the same side of the table as the client and say, hey, here is your comprehensive 5-year energy strategy.
And I'm guessing that strategy would highly recommend buying a lot of Schneider gear.
Exactly. It completely changes the sales cycle. You aren't just a vendor anymore. You're a trusted advisor. Plus, it introduced high-margin, recurring consulting contracts.
The really big fish in this era, though, was Invensys in 2014. $5.2 billion. This was a legacy UK industrial giant.
Invensys was the game changer for industrial automation. They brought in huge brands like Wonderware, which does factory software, and Foxborough for process control.
So this is the software running the actual assembly lines.
Right. And this allowed Schneider to finally go toe-to-toe with the really big boys, Siemens and ABB. They could finally offer a full suite, from the physical sensor on the factory floor all the way up to the software running the entire plant.
Okay, so it completes the stack. But, and I want to push back on this a little bit, buying all these disparate pieces is one thing. Making them actually work together is another entirely. I mean, you've got French hardware, American data center gear, Spanish smart grid software, and British factory automation. That sounds like an integration nightmare.
Oh, it absolutely was a risk. And for a while in those early days, it was pretty messy. You had different code bases, different sales teams stepping on each other's toes, fighting over the same clients. But the unification strategy that fixed it was this platform they called EcoStruxure.
Which honestly sounds like standard corporate branding fluff.
The name might be a bit corporate, yeah, but the architecture behind it is very real. EcoStruxure is an open, IoT-enabled architecture. It basically connects everything and forces all these different pieces to speak the same language.
Our source material breaks this down into 4 components. I want to walk through this because this is what they call the digital flywheel.
Yes, let's break it down. Step 1 is connectable products.
So this is the smart hardware, the breakers, the sensors, the UPS units.
Right. They aren't passive anymore.
Yeah.
They are constantly generating data about their own performance and energy use.
Okay, so step 1 is harvest the data. What's step 2?
Step 2 is edge control. This is the local system managing things in real time. It's the software sitting right there in the building, keeping the lights on, making sure the factory doesn't overheat.
Got it. And step 3 is software and digital services.
This is the cloud layer, the analytics. So they have something called EcoStruxure Asset Advisor. It takes all that data from the hardware, runs it through cloud algorithms, and predicts failures. It tells you pump number 4 is vibrating abnormally and will likely fail in 3 days.
Which seamlessly leads to the 4th part of the flywheel, field services. Because if the software predicts a failure, you need a human to go fix it.
Exactly. And who do you call? You call the Schneider service team.
And then, presumably, that service tech replaces the dying part with a brand new Schneider connectable product, and the whole wheel spins again.
That is the flywheel effect in action. More connected products means more data. More data means better software insights. Better insights create more demand for their services. And good service means the customer buys more products.
I want to highlight the sticky factor here for you listening. If you buy a standard, dumb circuit breaker from Company A, you can easily replace it with one from Company B next year. It's no big deal. But if your entire factory's predictive maintenance logic is built on Schneider's proprietary EcoStruxure platform,
You are totally locked in. The switching costs become astronomical. You aren't just replacing a piece of metal, you'd be ripping out the central nervous system of your entire building.
that is a massive moat. So that explains the why of the strategy. Let's look at the financials, so what? Because Wall Street generally hates hardware businesses. They are cyclical. Construction booms, you sell breakers, construction busts, your revenue tanks. How has this digital pivot actually changed their bottom line?
Well, it smooths out the revenue completely. The magic phrase here is recurring revenue.
Subscriptions instead of one-time sales.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
By 2024, an incredible 77% of their agnostic software revenue was recurring. So they moved away from selling a software license once a decade. Now, it's all SaaS, software as a service.
And let's talk about the profitability of that. Software margins are usually, what, 80 to 90%? Making heavy hardware is considerably less profitable.
The profit blend is where you see the real success of the strategy. Look at their energy management division, which is heavily integrated with this digital software approach. In 2024, it posted a 22.1% profit margin.
Wow.
Now compare that to their industrial automation division, which deals more with discrete manufacturing hardware. That division was sitting lower at 14.8%.
That is a massive spread. We're talking over 700 basis points of difference just because of the software layer.
It proves the entire thesis. The more software and services you wrap around your hardware, the more profitable your company becomes, and they are pushing this hard. In 2024, the digital flywheel accounted for 57% of the group's total revenue.
And the target is to hit 60 to 65% by 2027.
That's the goal.
They're even doing this thing called hardware as a service. Like, instead of selling you a UPS battery for your server room, they basically sell you battery power as a service.
Yeah, they install the equipment, but you just pay a monthly fee for guaranteed uptime. It completely changes the incentive structure.
Right, because if they own the battery, they want it to last as long as possible. They use their own software to optimize it so they don't have to replace it. It's brilliant.
Before we move on, we have to mention the climax of their software acquisition spree, the AVEV deal.
Ah, yes. They merged with them in 2018, but then fully acquired them in 2023. Why was that so critical?
AVEVA essentially created one of the world's largest industrial software companies under the Schneider umbrella. AVEVA covers the design phase. They make the 3D CAD software used to actually design the power plant or the factory in the first place.
Oh, I see. So it's the very beginning of the life cycle.
Exactly. It's their data hub strategy. You design the plant in AVEVA, you build it using Schneider hardware, and you operate it using EcoStruxure software. It's an end-to-end loop.
Okay, so the tech is there, the margins are there, but let's play devil's advocate for a second. We mentioned GE earlier. Why did this massive pivot work for Schneider when it failed so spectacularly for other legacy companies?
It comes down to a few key success factors. Number one is leadership consistency. Triquar was CEO for nearly 2 decades. He had a very clear vision and the time to see it through.
And he had a very unusual leadership style, didn't he?
Very. He didn't really have a fixed office. He constantly traveled to customers. He even moved the executive leadership hub to Hong Kong for a while to be closer to the growth markets. He basically lived on a plane.
Contrast that with GE, where they went through multiple CEOs during their digital pivot, each with a totally different vision.
Right. The second factor is their integration ability. They didn't just smash these companies together. They bought best-in-breed software firms, and this is crucial. They kept the software talent. They didn't force a rigid hardware culture onto agile software developers.
That is usually the hardest part of an acquisition.
And the third major factor is timing, specifically around sustainability. They aligned their entire digital tool set with the global push for decarbonization.
Right, the ESG wave, environmental, social, and governance goals.
Every major corporation suddenly had a mandate from their board to reduce their carbon footprint. But to reduce it, you have to measure it. And Schneider was standing right there saying, we sell efficiency.
We have the sensors to track your energy, the software to analyze it, and the consultants to help you fix it.
Exactly. They position their digital transformation as the direct solution to their clients' climate goals.
We should also know the R&D aspect. Our sources show they filed over 1,400 patents in 2024 alone, so they weren't just buying innovation, they were actively building it in-house while integrating these massive acquisitions.
It's a dual engine. You buy the huge paradigm shifts, but you optimize and invent the daily improvements yourself.
So to summarize this whole journey, Schneider Electric evolved from a traditional products company to a performance company. They don't just sell you a switch anymore, they sell you the absolute guarantee that the switch works, that it won't break unexpectedly, and that it saves you energy.
It really is a blueprint for what people are calling the industrial metaverse. It proves that legacy industrial firms can pivot to these high-margin recurring revenue models,
Right.
but only if they're willing to cannibalize their old, comfortable ways of working to build a unified platform.
It's fascinating, and I want to leave you, the listener, with a final, slightly provocative thought to mull over. Schneider is now essentially a data company that just happens to make hardware. As they gather exabytes of data from millions of assets, factories, hospitals, data centers globally, what happens when their AI knows more about a specific factory's performance than the actual owner of the factory does?
That is the power of the platform. They see the macro trends no single operator can see.
It's a brave new world for the basement switchboard. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of our Digital Servitization Exchange podcast. We hope the insights sparked new ideas, challenged assumptions, and brought clarity to the evolving world of service and digital-driven business models. This podcast is grounded in extensive research across various fields, drawing on years of academic work, case studies, and cutting-edge publications. It also shaped by hands-on experience of our collaboration partners, whose real-world challenges and successes help us to translate theory into practice. If you enjoyed the episode, consider following the podcast and sharing it with colleagues who are navigating the civilization journey. Your support helps us continuing bridging high-quality research-based and practice-proven perspectives straight to your ears. Thank you for tuning in and see you in the next episode.